How's it going, guys? Cody back again, dropping yet another video. Right, guys, gonna jump straight into it again now, no messing about. As you can see from the title, this video is advice to those people who are thinking of becoming a prison officer. Now, I'm obviously doing this video, obviously. I've asked Big Q to do a video as well. I've also asked a former prison officer with over 20 years experience for his video and his opinions and advice to those that are thinking of joining the service. So you've got three different people there. You've got former prisoner in Big Q, and a former prison officer with over 20 years experience, right? All the opinions could differ, but I think they're going to be very parallel and along the same sort of lines. Maybe, maybe not. Again, if you've served in prison, if you've been a prison officer, put your thoughts and your opinions in the comment section below. If you want to join in this discussion and send me a video of your thoughts and advice and opinions and advice to those thinking of joining the prison service, again, I'll put my phone number in the description below. Feel free to send me your videos. Anyway, guys, let's jump into it. Now, my first advice straight off the bat to anyone thinking of becoming a prison officer would be don't do it. And the reason I say that is because I think the prison service gets sold to people as this, like you're going to work miracles, you're going to make a big difference in these people's lives, you're going to be the fork in the road where it's get left or continue on that like a path of criminality and everything else, right? And I think that's how the job's sold to them. I think that they sold it in a way that's like, you're going to make a difference in people's lives. And I'm sorry to say, but in my opinion, in my experiences, prison officers are turnkeys. They're there to manage and try to control the madness, what's going on within prisons, right? Prison succeeds, in my opinion, as a former prisoner, in demoralizing, desensitizing, dehumanizing, and makes you even more disenfranchised than when you enter the system. Now, I've got a big gripe with the age of these prison officers that are currently running prisons. Now, Forest Bank, for example, 19, 20, 21-year-old, right? Wet behind the ears, no life experience, come working from McDonald's, just no life experience. They've not lived, they've worked normal jobs, and then they think, oh, I'm going to become a prison officer. And then they get a set of keys, they do the training, which I think is 9-10 weeks here in the UK, where in Norway, it's about 2 years before they get the keys and before they're on the job. And I think that that they're not told the reality of what comes with the job. Now, first things off the bat, if you're thinking about joining the service, you need to think long and hard. Are you mentally tough enough to deal with the conditions? What's going on within prisons? And if you come across and you're quite a passive person and you're quite emotional, and little things upset you, don't join the service. You're going to see kids slashing up. You're going to see kids setting themselves on fire, setting the cells on fire, setting themselves on fire. You're going to see people overdosing. You're going to see people under the influence of drugs. You're going to see suicide attempts. You're going to see suicides. You're going to be cutting people down that are hanging or that are slashed up and are in a pool of blood on the floor. I've seen a prisoner throw himself headfirst off a landing. Stays with you. And if you've got quite a weak stomach or you're quite soft-natured and quite a sensitive person, you've got to think long and hard about the job, because ultimately becoming a prison officer, right, and I'm for prisoners, but becoming a prison officer, it will affect you emotionally, it will affect you physically, because of the record levels of violence we're seeing in our prisons, prisoner-to-prisoner assaults, prisoner on prison officers. What doesn't get collated as prison officers attacking prisoners, it goes on massively, even though the system would like to make out that it doesn't. If you're going to join the service, it will affect you physically, emotionally, and not to mention psychologically. There's a high probability that you will develop post-traumatic stress disorder through your experiences. I've seen prison officers that drink on a nightly basis. That's their way of dealing with what their experience working within the prison. Now, if you're going to join the service and you're naive and you think that you're going to make a difference in these prisoners' lives, then you're a glorified key turner, unlocking doors, opening doors, right? Obviously, there's a lot more involved in the job than that. But the fact is, you're going to be out overstretched. You're going to be massively outnumbered. You're going to become reliant on your panic button. If you are involved in an altercation with a prisoner, you will not get support from the senior management within the prison. You will be potted. You will be swilled, potted. Someone defecating into a piece of paper, toilet roll, piece of A4 paper, throwing it at you, running up to you, running it in your face, coming up from behind you, sticking it in your face, swilling you with urine, or potting you with urine and feces, piss and shit, fermented, might be in a plastic squeezy bottle, runs up right in your face, goes on. Now, like I say, then you've got the psychological aspect of, if you see somebody, if you're cutting somebody down, say you go to open cells and you're on the twos on this day and you're popping cells and you pop a cell and there's a prisoner hanging there, how's that going to affect you? Because even the most strongest of people, it's going to affect them, it's going to stay with them. I'm sick to death of seeing young, naive, wet behind the ears people joining the prison service, right? Getting a set of keys and some epaulets, walking around thinking they're bad on a power trip. They weigh about 6 stone wet through. There's some big lads in jail, yeah, man. Some big boys in jail. I'm 6'4", I tip the scales at 20 stone plus, right? There's kids in there that they're in the gym all the time. They're massive lads, right? And you're 6 stone wet through. And there's like 3 or 4 officers on the wing, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on sickness, what prison you're in, the staffing levels, budget, etc., etc. How are you going to deal with it? How are you going to deal when you run onto a landing and one of your officers is getting his head kicked in? Is your ass going to fall out? Are you a non-confrontational type? I think to join the prison service, I think you've got to have a certain mindset. I think you've got to carry yourself a certain way. Now, unfortunately, I do believe there's people that join the prison service because they're a bit sick and they like seeing they get enjoyment by seeing others suffer. And unfortunately, that's what prison is. Human warehousing, some of the most vulnerable, mentally ill, susceptible, and some of the most dangerous people in society. Right? And like I say, prison doesn't work. And if the job's sold to you that you're going to make a difference in these prisoners' lives, bollocks, right? If you join the service and you're quite passive and quite naive and quite gullible, the fact is you're going to end up in a prisoner's pocket. And what I mean by that is a prisoner will manipulate you. Prisoners are masters of manipulation. They will always seek to exploit weakness, whether that's in another prisoner, whether that's in a prison officer, whether that's in the security within the prison. Prisoners are masters of manipulation and will always seek to exploit every situation to further their own cause and to better themselves. And if they can make money, right, that's how they work. And the masters of it, fantastic at it. They're absolutely amazing at it, right? Now, like I say, I think that people join the service thinking, oh, well, I didn't have any job prospects. Been working at McDonald's. I'm 19, now I'm 20. I'm 6 stone wet through. I'm going to go and join the service, prison service. I don't know what the training fully entails, but I know it's 9 to 10 weeks. I think about 7 to 10 days is spent on control and restraint. Again, if you are 6 stone wet through and you're trying to manhandle a 6 foot, 18 stone man, just know that you're going to get thrown all over the place if that prisoner's kicking off. Right, like I said to you, you've got to go into the job with your eyes open, right? For me, they should set a barometer, like a minimum age requirement. For me, it should be 25 and over for people to become prison officers. If you end up working at a Mickey Mouse jail, like a private prison, right? Again, the first aim of that prison and the last aim is financial gain. That comes at the behest of a lot of things. treatment, conditions, repairs, quality of food, not for obviously prison officers, for prisoners. And it also comes at the behest of the quality of officers that they ultimately employ. Pay people peanuts, you will get monkeys. Now, I think the starting salary from what I saw recently for Forest Bank, which is run by those jokers, Sodexo Justice Services, I think it was about 22,000 starting salary, if I can remember correctly. Now, that might sound like a lot. 22 bag, right? You've got to think what comes with that. Being a prison officer, you're a social worker. You are a first aider. You are a paramedic, because when people are cutting them down and you might be giving them mouth to mouth and stuff, you're trying to save that prisoner's lives. You won't do, because most officers don't care, and that's why we see the sheer amount of prisoners leaving prison in body bags as we do. Your social workers, your firefighters as well. Cell fire. You don't open the door and let them out. No. There's an inundation hatch in the door. You put a key in, you uncoil. That's if it's been lubricated. I've seen it where they failed and they've had to resort to spraying water under the door. So you'll be firefighting. You'll be administering first aid. Like I said, you've got nurses as well. But like I said, it might be a life or death situation. You'll be dealing with code blues where it's danger to life or the person's pretty much dead, suicide attempts and such. Code reds, people slashing up and blood everywhere. Code blues, finding bodies unresponsive. You'll be doing act books, general duties. The fact is, I think that people join and think, oh, I'm going to be fantastic. I look good in a uniform. And what prison actually is will fuck with you. If you're going into the service, if you carry yourself and you're a strong person and you've got your head screwed on your shoulders and you're a bit streetwise to some extent, and you're quite a strong person and you're not a weak individual and you're not easily put off and you can deal with conflict. Example, there was a guy a few months ago that reached out to me. He was joining the prison service and he would work as a doorman. And you get really good job for dealing with what comes with a prison, to be honest with you. Confrontation side of things anyway. The guy, because as a former doorman myself, obviously would have done conflict management, things like that. So very, would have had a physical presence about him, knows how to diffuse situations and conflict management. And like I said, that's just one aspect of the job. There's a lot more to the job. Like I said, if you're gullible, naive and vulnerable and you're going to feel sorry for prisoners, you could end up in a sexual relationship with a prisoner, or you swap mobile numbers with a prisoner, because even though mobile phones are banned, a prisoner's they're everywhere in prison. He'll say to you, miss, right? Say it's a female, miss, right? And he starts flirting with them over messages and she's giving it back and stuff. And he says, listen, miss, send me a picture of you in your uniform. Put your camera up here. Take a picture of yourself with your tits out in your uniform. Send it to me on WhatsApp. She sends the picture. Bam. He's got her over a barrel. Right? These are the situations you'll find yourself in. Like I say, if you're a male prison officer and you're straight, obviously that's not going to happen. But you still you can fall into the trap of, listen, prisoners watch and you'll see a prison officer and they've got low morale because they're outnumbered and they're underappreciated and the stretch beyond fucking the imagination can even stretch, right? And they feel undervalued and they're pissed off and they're demoralised and they don't really want to be at work, or they're hungover. And a prisoner's like, hey, listen, boss, listen, I can earn you a month's wage, yeah, just for bringing in some parcels, yeah, depending on the amount of drug and stuff like that. I can get you a month's wage, yeah, for 5 minutes work. You get it in. Because obviously, if that prison officer falls into that fucking trap, and lots of them do, I'm fucking sick of covering corrupt prison officers, right? And you fall into that trap, and you go outside and you meet someone that this prisoner's sorted out, and he gives you a load of drugs, and then you bring the drugs into the prison. As soon as them drugs cross the threshold into prison, the price goes up 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times what it did on the street, right? Some prisons are on the ball, with searching staff. A lot of them aren't. Like I said, just what's going on within our prisons is a disgrace. And if you're thinking about becoming an officer, right, people, I've had it over the past few years where people have reached out to me. People that are thinking about going into the prison service and saying, Cody, listen, how do I be when I go to be a prison officer? And I'm like, it's quite a random question, that, isn't it? How do I act? Because they're probably mindful in the back of their mind that violence within prisons is an epidemic proportion. It's beyond crisis, it's beyond words. So they're probably a bit mindful, thinking, well, how do I act? How do I be? So if you're a dominant person and you go and be dominant, right? If you're passive, go and be passive. If you're going to go and antagonize prisoners and wind them up and piss them off, right, and you can't deal with the consequences, then simple, don't do it. You've got to understand, the first bit of advice I would say to anyone that's thinking about becoming an officer, apart from thinking long and hard about it, is understand that these prisoners are already being punished. The punitive measure of prison is loss of liberty. Now, that doesn't sound like much to you and I. Well, it does not to me, because obviously I've been in prison. I've seen what loss of liberty does to people. Locked behind your door for sustained amounts of time with your own thoughts. Dangerous, dangerous place. Most dangerous thing in prison for a prisoner isn't the understaffing, isn't the violence, isn't the drugs, isn't the debt. Most dangerous thing in prison, your own thoughts, your own mind. It can take you to some very, very, very dark places. A lot of prisoners have lived very hard lives. And yes, we've committed crimes. And yes, our childhoods and our pasts are not excuses for our criminality, but the contributing factors. If you grow up in a household where domestic violence was a daily occurrence, and you become a violent person, are you a victim of your childhood or a product of your environment? Or, like I said, I've said it 1,000 times. Before most prisoners have ever been a prisoner, before they've ever been an offender, they've first been a victim. We've grown up in care. We've been sexually abused, physically abused, emotionally abused. Carers were addicts, care leavers, passed from pillar to post, no love, no affection, violent upbringings, unwanted, and like I say, that's not an excuse, but it's a contributing factor. Now, the loss of the punishment of prison, don't ever, if you're a prison officer and you're thinking about joining the service, right, don't ever look at prisoners and think, oh, well, they're here to be punished, let's punish them. Wrong mentality to have straight off the bat. And this is me being direct. This isn't me being on prisoner's side, and it's not being on prison officer's side. I am for prisoners, but this is actually down the line on the fence. Prisoners are already suffering immeasurably in prison, right? They're away from their loved ones, they're away from the missus, they're away from the children. They're told, like I said, you're told when you can shower, you're told when you can go out onto the yard, you're told when you go on association, you're told when you can go to the gym. Do you know what I mean? You're told when you eat. It's that sort of situation. So they're already being punished, right? And prison isn't good. I know we try to focus on the positives as the macho men that we are. Prison doesn't bother people and all that stuff. I get away from that. I've seen grown-ass men crying, struggling in prison, myself included. I know my prison standing on my head, but if I was to sit here and say that prison never got to me, I'd be lying to you. Now, like I said, if you're going to join the service, and I've asked these people are asking me how to act, I can't tell you how to act, right? If you are too friendly with prisoners, it could arouse suspicions with prison officers and security within the prison. If you take your job too seriously, and I think that's the biggest danger for anyone thinking of becoming a prison officer. If you're like a job's worth cunt, right, and you become a prison officer and you do your training and you get your keys and you're wearing your epaulets and you're walking around and you're thinking you're bad, right, then I'm sorry, but you're gonna have a bad time in the service, right? Like I said to you, they're already being punished, right? Don't go to prison and become power mad, because if you do, you're not going to have a good time. If you walk around the landings thinking you're big, thinking you're bad because you've got a uniform on and you've got a bit of authority, and the cons have got to call you miss or sir or boss or gov, and you get off on that, right? And when a prisoner speaks to you, you speak to them like shit, right? Prisoners will speak to you like shit back, and it'll get their backs up, right? A prisoner I remember being a cleaner at Forest Bank, right? And we swapped wings, right? G2, which was induction at the time. swap with H1. So induction was moving from G2 to H1. It was a bigger wing, right? So we swapped. Now, only some of the officers came over. The officers that were already on H-wing, some of them stayed, right? And there was one particular guy. And we was cleaners, we work our arse off. We had a good working relationship with the officers, and that's how it went, right? And I've landed on the wing and everything's sweet. And I said to him, I said, yeah, boss. And I asked him a question. And he just spoke to me like shit. And I let it slide because I thought, I don't want to lose my job, but my brain was telling me to kick off and fucking hammer him, right? And then there was another situation and something happened again. And so I said to the red badge was there. So I kicked off and I said, don't ever fucking chat to me like a dickhead again. I said, I speak to you with respect, right? I said, I'll show you the respect. I said, we graft our ass off on here 7 days a week, yeah, for fucking tuppence eating there, right? And you speaking to me like I'm a prick. I said, if you hammer it again, I said, I'll fucking hammer you, right? And I proper lost the plot. And Sousa said to me, don't worry, sir, I will sort it out, no problem. So I went in and spoke with Sousa. I said, Sousa, I said, listen, Sousa was the red badge. Let me explain. Sousa was the red badge. Safe as houses, Sousa. Very big. I had a good respect for him. I used to be anti-prison officer. I used to be, like, you've got old school cons. I've got a prisoner versus prison officer mentality, right? When I worked alongside the officers, I got to respect the job massively. So I said to Sousa, I said, we graft our ass off on here 7 days a week, right? I said, we're polite, we're respectful, we do what's expected of us, we work into our social, right? And I said, we do everything that's expected and more. We go above and beyond, right? I said, I'm not having some kid who's in his 20s chatting to me like I'm a dickhead. When I spoke to him with respect, I said, if I spoke to him disrespectful and he spoke to me disrespectful back, fair dues. I said, but I'm not going to be spoken to by a prick. And people might think, well, you're a con. You shouldn't have that mentality. If you speak to a prisoner with respect, most of the time, he will speak to you with respect back, right? If you speak to him like a dickhead and treat him like he's a fucking idiot, right, he could get his back up and he could kick off. So like I said to you, if you're going to become a prison officer, you've got to approach it however you want to approach it. But the thing is, if you're too friendly with prisoners, then it could arouse suspicion with prison officers. If you're going to, my best advice would be down the line with them. Be respectful to prisoners if they're respectful to you. Respect works both ways. And also, you're there to do a job. But don't take your job too serious. At the end of the day, you get to go home. Then prisoners have got to stay there behind their doors, going through the mire, psychologically, emotionally, and everything else that comes with it. There are family relationships break down. A lot of these prisoners, and I'm not asking you to be sympathetic to prisoners, but a lot of these prisoners, before they've ever been offenders, they've first been victims, and I've said it a million times. The punitive measure of prison, they're already in prison, they're being punished. That is the punitive measure, losing your liberty. Then it should be about re-engaging them, giving them, re-educating them, reskilling them, reintegration, resettlement. Right? Unfortunately, rehabilitation is a made-up word. It's a politician's word. You've got to have a strong mindset if you're going to go into the service, and be prepared for every eventuality, because you're going to deal with deaths. You could deal with murders. You're going to become assaulted. You're going to be assaulted, and you might think, well, I don't sign up to be assaulted. You can't go swimming and not get wet. Right? It comes with the territory. But like I say, staff retention is a huge problem within prisons, because the job isn't all that it's painted out to be. It will affect you psychologically, emotionally. And the thing is, a lot of these prison officers join the service, and then within 2 years, they're gone. Within 12 months, they're gone, because they can't handle it. So do your research before you think about joining the service. I'm trying to give the balanced argument here. There are a lot of good prisoners that will speak to you with respect and are decent, and yeah, they've done wrong, but they're not dickheads. You've got a lot of prisoners in the system that are mentally ill and will take exception, and like I say, will try to manipulate you and try to get you in their pocket and bring in drugs in and corruption. If you're going to become a corrupt officer, chances are you're going to get caught. You wonder by bringing drugs, I'm giving both sides of the coin. If you're going to become a corrupt officer and you get caught bringing in drugs, mobile phones, SIM cards, tobacco and everything else, you're undermining the security of the prison. You're risking prison yourself, and like I say, because by you bringing drugs into the prison and contraband, spice, drugs, tobacco, mobile phones, SIM cards, weapons, whatever the case may be, by you bringing in contraband. Contraband incurs debt. Where you've got debt, contraband, you've got debt. Where you've got debt, you've got fear, bullying, intimidation, bullying, and violence even. And that obviously fuels the cycle of violence and crime within the prison. You've got female officers having sexual relationship with prisoners. It goes on. Think long and hard before joining the service. I'm going to get Big Q to do a video as well. I'm hoping a former prison officer with 20 years experience is going to do a video as well. Let me know what you think about the video. I've tried to do it from a prisoner's perspective, tried to put myself in the prison officer's shoes, but I've been very truthful, direct, and my opinions are straight down the barrel. I'm going to leave it there, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. If you want to do a video on this subject matter, my number will be in the description below. Cody out.